a hidden cause of your weight loss resistance, or don't go away if you don't want to lose weight, a hidden cause of your inability to gain weight if you're in need of gaining lean muscle weight, could be low-level chronic inflammation. Or for you, it could be maybe it's not about weight loss or weight gain, but it's the aches of knees or hips, or just that chronic, my belly isn't right, my gut isn't right. In this episode, I interview naturopath Elizabeth Yarnell, and we'll define inflammation, discuss how it starts, the many symptoms telling you that it's showing up, what increases it, and how to reduce yours. And that part, my friend, is pretty easy. If you aren't feeling yourself, what I like to call the 100% you-ness, or exercise isn't feeling enjoyable, it may be more than you. We tend to go there, don't we? Like, I'm not motivated. I've heard that so often and I just don't believe it. So if it's you, I'm calling BS. You're plenty motivated. In fact, you're plenty disciplined and you're committed. Or maybe not that. That may be the place to work. But a lot of times, I think it's just you're unaware that there are other forces working against you, potentially residing in your body, as we will talk about, that might be hidden reasons why you're not where you want to be, whether it's with energy or with gaining muscle and body composition. But it's time to get on top of it, because it's not only your now, but it is your longevity. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns. Most of all, though, we hope to inspire you that there are solutions to any struggles that you have right now, and that we can be so much better even than the model that we've had. Even if we've looked at some good ones, we can change the model of how we age by, first of all, changing our expectation about age. I share what to eat, I share how to move, and I share how to change your mindset, sometimes about those two things, so you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And if you are somebody who needs to restart, or potentially you're exercising but it's not working and need a reset, I'm going to link in these show notes to the 5-day flip. It is literally what it says. 5 short days, 5 short workouts. I'm talking short, 15 minutes or less, that you can do in the privacy, convenience of your own home to do a couple of things. Number one, prove that less is more. You can actually feel better and have the promise of energy by doing less, cutting back, and just committing to doing it regularly. And that, too, you do have time to exercise. And sometimes that's what it takes. Just 5 days. You can change your gut. You can change the chemistry of your blood within minutes of starting exercise. So just doing it and getting moving in the right way, in a way that takes care of your body, can make all the difference. So that's the 5-day flip. I'll put that in the show notes. And let's dive in to this episode. Since being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1999, Elizabeth Yarnell has been studying how to manage autoimmunity naturally as a traditional naturopath and certified LEAP therapist. She's worked with hundreds of MS and other autoimmune sufferers in her nationwide clinic using unique, personalized natural therapies to empower them to reclaim their health. She's a TEDx speaker, award-winning author whose cookbook has sold more than 60,000 100,000 copies, a patented inventor, and has been featured on CBS, NBC, ABC, PBS, that's a lot of alphabet, by the way, as well as in Good Housekeeping Health, Martha Stewart Living Radio, and many other outlets. Elizabeth, thank you so much for adding Flipping 50 to that list.
Well, I am so excited to be with you today, Deborah.
Okay, my audience's ears are probably pricked up by the title of today's podcast for sure. And I think it's really important to talk about chronic inflammation, but I'm going to go like way back to the starting line because we talk about it and we talk about it sometimes, I think, in passing and maybe take for granted everybody knows what that is. But it is elusive. I mean, it's not tangible. We can't see it. So can we just start there? Let's define inflammation.
That's such a great place to start because really I feel like even the word inflammation and the concept of it as being really at the root of most or if not all symptoms in our bodies is kind of new to the medical community. And it's not something we have been conditioned to think about as we go through our lives. We all know what inflammation looks like after, say, when I twisted my ankle in a jazzercise class and it blew up like a balloon. That's obviously inflammation. But really what I like to talk about, what I focus on is chronic hidden inflammation. So we can talk about, well, do you have headaches? That's inflammation in the head. Or sinus issues, or runny, stuffy noses, or infections. That's inflammation in the sinuses. Inflammation in the chest could be asthma. It could be high blood pressure. In the heart could be heart conditions. Inflammation in the belly could be acid reflux. It could be cramping when you eat or digestive dysfunction. Inflammation in your bowels could look like constipation or even diarrhea. Both of those are inflammatory conditions. Inflammation in your joints, we call it arthritis. Really anything that ends in an itis, that's the medical terminology, meaning inflamed. So almost every condition has inflammation at its root. And that is so key to understanding because really the way that the inflammation is manifesting is less important than the fact that there's inflammation to begin with. And if there's inflammation in the body, then that's actually good news because we can address that.
Great definition. And thanks for giving me all of those analogies. That's fantastic. Okay. Now, the biggest question, I think, is what causes it? So you're talking about the migraines being an indication of inflammation or the constipation. And you're talking to the right audience here, to probably a group of women who don't always tell people when that's the case for them because it's an uncomfortable topic. And I mean, you don't, go to coffee with your girlfriend and say, oh, by the way, I'm dealing with this. I mean,
oh, by the way, I haven't pooped in a week.
I know, right? Oh, so, what causes it? What brings it on? If I didn't have this problem last week or last month and now I do, what brings it on?
So inflammation is always triggered by something. So I follow a lot Dr. Alessio Fasano. He's really the godfather of celiac disease. And he says that in the 3 factors that he and his team have found to be common to most, if not all, inflammatory issues, one of the main ones is an environmental trigger. So just like those celiac patients who don't understand why they're having all of these weird random symptoms and feeling so crappy until they figure out, oh, it's gluten, it's wheat, it's coming from that. And then as soon as they remove that from their lives, they're pretty much symptom free. It's the same with all symptoms. Unfortunately, it's not always wheat. And even actually with celiac patients, when I test their blood, I can see it's not only wheat for them too, but it can be almost anything. Food sensitivity reactions can take up to 4 days to manifest. So sometimes it's really hard to figure out, well, what did you eat 3 days ago that might be causing your constipation today? I know for myself, one of my most inflammatory foods is lettuce.
Wow.
Of all the most innocuous seeming foods possible. But for me,
all
when
kinds
I
of
eat
lettuce?
lettuce,
Or is
well, anything that's called lettuce. So I'm
Okay.
okay with arugula. I'm okay with kale, with spinach. So not leafy greens, but lettuce. And lettuce is a specific botanical food family. And for me, when I eat lettuce, because I have multiple sclerosis, inflammation in my body manifests as an MS symptom. And when I eat lettuce, I lose balance and I become wobbly on my feet. And I have fallen after eating lettuce and injured myself. It is a quite striking change because in the days I don't eat lettuce in my normal life because I know not to eat it, as I said, I do jazzercise, I ski, I dance, I walk my dog. I'm all over the place. I don't have any visible symptoms unless I eat that lettuce.
Interesting. Okay. Can I stop you there? So you mentioned there are 3 common triggers for inflammation. One is environmental. What are the other 2? Are you going to disclose?
Absolutely. So Dr. Fasano says that the first element is a genetic predisposition toward being hypersensitive. So he's specifically talking about autoimmunity, but really autoimmunity just means chronic inflammation. So when I learned this and I looked back at my family history, yes, there's absolutely a genetic predisposition in my family tree for being hypersensitive. My mom had migraines and IBS. My aunt has fibromyalgia. My uncle on my other side passed from scleroderma, a terrible autoimmune disease. My cousin has Guillain-Barré. It's all over my family tree. Can I see these hypersensitive people who are struggling with chronic inflammation in their bodies? So the first one, a genetic predisposition. And I actually think that we can adjust this part of the definition to include hidden parasitic infestation. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But that can even cross over even if you don't have any genetic predispositions in your family tree. So genetic predisposition, environmental trigger, we talked about that. And then the third part is leaky gut. And we know that leaky gut happens when there is chronic inflammation in a body. It always damages the digestive tract. And since 80% or more of our digestive tract is involved in our immunity and how our body functions, then that leaky gut, which really means inflamed cells or increased intestinal permeability, if we want to put it in medical speak. But what it means is that there's inflammation and it's affecting the cells that line the stomach and bowels. And those cells really need to be tightly packed like tiles on a bathroom floor so that they're watertight. So when your stomach is going through the process of digestion with all of the stomach acids and enzymes that are going in there along with the foods, that bag of your stomach is watertight. But when there's chronic inflammation, those cells become swollen and now it opens up little gaps in between the cells. And that's when undigested food particles can slip through, setting off more inflammation in the body.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, that was a long-winded answer to what causes inflammation, but no, I am so thrilled to get it because it's not simplistic. I think that may help a listener. I'm speaking for you listeners because you're not here, but I think that helps someone feel better because it is not so simple. It's like we wouldn't be able to put our finger on that. It's going to take a little detective work to figure out which one of those. And then once we identify it, there may still be some tweaking and testing and monitoring that has to go on, similar to you, like finding out it was lettuce that led you to this. Probably didn't come to you immediately.
No, you've hit the nail on the head. It can be really challenging to figure it out for yourself. Sometimes you might eat something, and for instance, I have an MS client, and the other day, she ate lentils. And 2 hours later, she noticed that her left arm was heavy, feeling heavy, which is an MS symptom for her, and that the lentils were causing the inflammation. Well, first of all, that was a huge milestone for her because that's part of this whole dietary therapy where we bring you down to a less inflamed state, and then we reduce the variables so that you're able to see very clearly when you eat that one new thing if it's what's causing your symptoms, your new symptoms. But how would she ever have guessed that? It's almost impossible to figure it out by yourself. Really, almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. So love that. Okay. So for all of the listeners, this is definitely probably a hot topic. So, women in midlife, you're all here, and for many, not for all. So, I love you, and I'm not excluding you. If you're here and you don't have weight to lose, this isn't you. Maybe you're here, usually listening for how do I gain and retain my lean muscle mass or my bone density. Don't go away, because you or somebody you know still may deal with inflammation, but when it's related to potentially a hidden cause of weight loss resistance, that inability to lose weight when you're doing all the right things. Can you connect the dots for us on how is that inflammation, that hidden inflammation, getting in our way?
Yes. Well, first of all, even if you are underweight, that can also be a sign of hidden inflammation, that you're not able to keep the weight on to a point where you're healthy enough. And if that's an issue, then that is also inflammatory. Once we
I'm going to interrupt, and I'm so sorry, but because we talk about this all the time, and we talk about what we're doing, the majority of our listeners, for right now, because we want the 2-for-1, we want results now, but we also are, now more concerned than ever about our 20-year, our 30 years, our 40 years from right now. So is that a piece of frailty and muscle loss and sarcopenia, inflammation?
I think so, because the reason that our bones get so porous is because we're not absorbing and assimilating the minerals like calcium and phosphorus that need to be in our bones, and vitamin D. And just like we were talking about a second ago about leaky gut, all of that goes into the lack of assimilation of the nutrients that you are taking into your body through your food or even through supplements. When you're inflamed, you're not absorbing and assimilating the nutrients that you need to be. And as we probably all realize, it takes a long time for these things to show up in the body, because the body will rob Peter to pay Paul. And if the body is saying, well, we don't have enough calcium for our bones, we're going to take it from someplace else, which is really where you also need that to be. And by the time it shows up as bone porosity, it's so far along. So we can really help avoid those kinds of conditions simply by improving our digestion now and removing the inflammation from our body now before we hit 70 or 80 and break that hip.
Yeah, love that. Or reach 70 or 80 or 90, and then it's so very common that you're not digesting very well. Elimination becomes something you plan your day around all too often for older adults. And I think none of us want that for ourselves, of course. So I'd love to review, because we've mentioned so many. Is there anything we missed if we were looking at what kinds of symptoms occur with inflammation? You've mentioned migraines and leaky gut. Probably if it's leaky gut, I'm going to guess there may be constipation or diarrhea or gas or bloating. So all of the things. Can you do a dump?
A literal dump.
Yeah. Well, okay, gosh, that was pun intended or not so much. Okay. I walked right into that. I set you up for that. You should thank me. Okay.
Well, let's talk about the things that are a little bit less concrete, like chronic fatigue. I
Mm,
find, for instance, that when I eat wheat, I become narcoleptic. I've actually literally fall asleep within an hour or two after eating wheat. And
hmm.
I have found myself woken up underneath the dining room table at a dinner party after eating some wheat at a dinner party. So it can happen pretty quickly and
That's fun.
unexpectedly. Very mortifying. Very
Dinner and a
mortifying.
show, some would call that.
Yes. So fatigue is a hallmark of inflammation activity, because when the body is inflamed, the metabolic activities are in overdrive to maintain that state of inflammation. So it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And if you find that you have a hard time with your energy levels, that could be a big sign that you have really systemic inflammation around your body. So, we have all of these kind of vague diagnoses that people might say, oh, I have fibromyalgia, or I have chronic fatigue, or what are some of the other things that people, that doctors like to diagnose people with, which I really
IBS.
call, yeah,
Mhm.
IVS. That's a good one. So, and I hope this is okay for me to say on this show, but I call them bullshit diagnoses, because they don't really tell us what's going on. They don't tell us why it's happening, nor do they tell us how do we fix it.
Mm.
So they're just kind of a description of random things, which really is all diagnoses are. Um, they're just a description, but they don't tell us the course that we need to take to correct the issue.
Such a good comment. Yes. And by the way, yes, you can say BS here. It's
Okay.
okay. I had somebody start out with the F word once, and I was like, whoa, I don't think that's happened before. So yeah, we're good. We're all good here. It livens things up a little bit. I do want to come back to something else too that you hinted at earlier, and I think we all need a little definition. So you talked about parasitic infections. So first of all, let's do a definition. What does that mean? And how did that happen? How do we get rid of it? Or how do we know it, I guess, first?
Yes. So the definition of a parasite is an entity that lives off a host. And the goal of a parasite in humans is to find a host, set up residence, populate, and live really forevermore, happily ever after. There is no benefit to the host in a parasitic relationship. If there were, it would be called a symbiotic relationship, where both the host and the entity would benefit. But in a parasitic relationship, only the parasite benefits. So parasites can be submicroscopic. They can be visible to the human eye. We can pick them up so easily. You can get them through eating at a salad bar. You can get them through eating sushi or undercooked pork. You can pick them up through swimming in a lake or a river, or even a public pool or a water park. You can pick them up through walking barefoot in your grass. You can pick them up through digging in your garden, through playing with your pets, cleaning out the kitty's litter box. There are so many parasites, probably way more parasites than our scientists have even identified now. The biggest challenge with parasitic infection is diagnosing it, is identifying that that's the problem, because testing for parasites is notorious for false negatives, which means that if you do take a parasite test, of which it may be a stool test or even a blood test, and it comes back positive, well, fantastic. 100% you got some buggers in you. But if it comes back negative, still a 50-50 chance you still got parasites. So honestly, I never even suggest people waste their time and money getting tested for parasites if I suspect they might have them. And instead, they should simply go directly to treating them. And I believe that treating parasites with herbal tinctures or herbal combinations is much more gentle and effective than using any kind of pharmaceuticals. The anti-parasitic pharmaceuticals that we have at our disposal are ivermectin, which you may have heard referred to treat a virus, which is not correct. It's a parasitic, and also Flagyl. But both of those highly, highly toxic pharmaceutical drugs wipe out everything. They're non-discriminatory. They might get the adult parasites in your body, but they're also going to wipe out your entire microbiome, all those good bacteria, the good flora and fauna that we need to maintain our healthy states in our bodies. So you have to kind of start all over. If you take one of those drugs, and I have taken them many times, you end up feeling like a blown out eggshell and very, very vulnerable to any kind of passing viral or bacterial infections that might be floating around in our world. So I really think herbal ways are better. Also because the pharmaceuticals only really kill the adults. They don't address the eggs. Some parasites lay 2,000 eggs a day, or the larvae, which is kind of like the teenager part of the parasitic life cycle. So I see a lot of people who take the pharmaceuticals and they experience a short window of feeling a little bit better. And then the parasites come back because the eggs grow up and whatever eggs do, they crack when they're born.
Okay, well, I want to back up just a bit. So first of all, in describing all the places that you could pick one up, that was kind of a buzzkill, girlfriend. There's a lot of places. So we're all wanting now to stay inside. But I have a question. So about picking that up, is that simply chance? I mean, it could happen to any of us, or is it related to our immunity or a certain person's resilience?
So oftentimes parasites, we will ingest parasites and our systems, our digestive systems, will be able to just push them directly out and not give them an opportunity to set up residence. I'm not sure. I think it would be impossible to know any kinds of statistics like, 50% of the people who ingest Giardia from a water supply pass it out without getting symptoms. I don't know. That's a complete made up statistic. I don't even know if we could find that out. I do know some other stories. I know in the 1990s, the entire city of Milwaukee was infected with cryptosporidium through their municipal water supply. I know that in 2018, there were a dozen or 13 McDonald's outlets across a number of states that were found to have Cyclospora infected in their salads. So I know it's very easy to pick up a parasite. Is it by chance? Maybe somewhat. You can probably reduce your chances of picking up parasites by not eating raw fish, by not eating undercooked pork, by wearing shoes when you walk outside, by trying not to get even one drop of unfiltered water to your lips. But whether or not that will always keep you safe, I don't know if that's even enough, because sometimes it just happens. And I know that I have had parasites 6 or 7 times in my life. And I will explain to people, oftentimes you might have written it off as, I got a food poisoning that night, or maybe I had a 24-hour stomach bug, or maybe I went to Thailand and I had diarrhea for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. So all of these could be instances when you've picked up a parasitic bug, but it's very hard to say. I mean, I've picked up Giardia several times from hiking in the Rocky Mountains. But I also did a 2-week horseback trip where I was camping out with the horses across the eastern Tibetan Plateau in 1998, where I did not pick up any parasites that time. But it was when we returned down to Chengdu, China, and we had a big banquet feast at a 4-star restaurant in Chengdu, China. And 15 of us met for dinner at 6 p.m. And by midnight, 12 of us were worshiping the porcelain gods.
I don't
So
know.
sometimes the most unlikely places are where the parasites might be waiting for you.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's stop talking about bugs. But I think we've got a far better understanding of them. And so thank you for painting that picture. I know that you say, 50 is the best time to take control of your health. I've got some feelings about that as well, but why do you say so?
Well, and I'm 53, so this is my time as well.
Mhm.
And I can really relate. This is a time I have to focus on me, whereas the last 20 years I've been focused on my kids and my career and my marriage. All of those things have really demanded a lot of my time and attention, and meaning that I've put aside a lot of the me things because I felt there were other priorities. But now my kids are a little bit bigger and my career is more defined. All of these things are combining to make it a better time of life for me. And I think many, many other women to finally pay attention to themselves and their own bodies and what's going on and bring them to a place where they can help to ensure better health moving forward for themselves.
So good. Yes. We like to say here at Flipping 50, there's no more powerful health influencer in the world than a midlife woman also. 3 generations looking at us,
I
our
love that.
kids, young adult kids, our partners, our girlfriends. I mean, where do you get your good information, right? And then
Mhm.
our in-laws, our parents. And nobody or never again are we going to be in that position again. So it's huge.
Mhm.
And I think that might have a little stronger tug on the heartstrings of some women who are finding it hard to put themselves first. It's bigger than you, even bigger. So I would love
Yes.
to know the title of your TEDx talk so listeners can find that.
The title of my TEDx talk, which I gave in 2014, was called Poisons in Our Everyday Foods. And I talked about not all of them, but some of the additives and preservatives and really untested chemicals that our food companies are putting into our foods and our FDA is allowing, because really the FDA's job is not to protect the American consumer's health, but to protect the interests of American food companies and food producers. So we have to remember that the FDA is not out there to protect us. And just because there is a food on the shelves, and I'll give you a great example of sweet and low, right? So saccharin, we found the link between saccharin and cancer in 1973, yet I still see those pink packets of sweet and low on the tables of coffee shops for people to put in their coffee.
Jeez. Yes. Such a great reminder. I mean, the FDA is not here for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think still, falsely people look for, FDA approved and think, oh, then it's okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Where is the best place for listeners to get more Elizabeth?
So the best place, the kind of hub for all of my activities, is my website at elizabethyarnell.com.
Fantastic. And I know you have a gift that is probably too juicy for us not to mention for listeners today. You want to tell us about that?
I do. Today, I am offering an 80% discount off the monthly fee for my Holistic Health and Wellness Collective. It's an online hub for people to learn about alternative therapies, alternative treatments, and find resources that they can implement right away. So there's a treasure trove of adaptable recipes so that you can avoid your hypersensitivity triggers, but still enjoy the foods that you love. There's a whole resources section so you can learn more about these kinds of food additives and other types of things that are out there lurking to influence your healthy status. Tons of videos, as well as interviews with practitioners like yourself, Deborah, who have good things to offer when it comes to empowering each of us to take control of our health and our future.
So good and so generous. So listeners, hopefully you're out and about and you're doing some moving while you're listening. I think we all absorb information better that way. So we've got the show notes all covered for you. All the links will be right here in the show notes. That will be at flipping50.com/chronic inflammation. So chronic inflammation is where you're searching. If you've forgotten that, when you come to Flipping 50, if you go to the podcast page, I'm sure you will find it as you scroll down. It's probably going to be there at the top for you who are avid listeners. And what are you waiting for? Right now, more than ever, 3 generations are looking to you for guidance and leadership. Let's start Flipping 50 today.